This is the moral component worksheet. Now, if you're, like I said, if you've already done this and you've kind of been through this routine before, you'll see right off the bat, there's a new section at the top of the worksheet. This emotional chain of change. Basically what this is, and this is the new piece we've added in, this is basically what a character arc is. Okay. One of the biggest challenges of this worksheet is figuring out how to connect the three pieces of the moral component: the moral blind spot, the immoral effect, and the dynamic moral tension, and the lesson that they're going to learn at the end of the story, how to connect all those things together in a seamless way so they all are self-supporting. That's the whole objective of this worksheet, is to get those four pieces all working together. And my big discovery here on this new worksheet is this chain of change. This helps you figure out how to make those connections happen, okay? So what this represents is essentially a character arc. Whenever everybody's talking about character arc, this is it. This is what happens in one of these arc things. Character arcs don't really exist. Excuse me. There is no such thing as a character arc, but this is what it is when you're trying to get one. Okay, so let me just go through these pieces, explain kind of what's going on. You're not going to understand all of it quite yet, but we will break each of these pieces down as we go through this. And this is going to be a long video, but that's okay. Okay, so we start off with this thing called the emotional wound. You have probably heard this term before. Your character needs to be flawed. They need to be wounded. They need to be hurt. They need to be broken in some way, etc., etc., etc. Yes, that's the emotional wound, okay? Something happens, and as a result of this event, it's usually a single event, not 8,000 pages of events. It's a scene, maybe two. But it's the thing that wounds them, not physically. They may lose an arm and a leg, who knows? But more importantly, they're wounded emotionally. The emotional wound, as a result of the event wound, is an emotion in them they thought was a strength. They relied on in a situation. It failed them miserably. And then as a result of that, something in them died. What died? Hint, hint, hint. The emotion that they leaned up against and that failed them. That strength died. That is something they no longer could trust. It's, you are dead to me. Okay, that's what's going on here. Wounding event occurs. An emotional strength they think they had, they relies on, fails them. It dies in them. But it's a wound, so they've got to get a scab. They got to put something on it because it's too painful. So what they do is they come up with some excuse about why this thing happened to them. I'm unlovable, I'm not enough, I'm a fraud, I'm weak, I'm whatever. Some generic statement that makes sense of why this terrible thing happened to them. That's the moral blind spot. The thing we talk about, the three keys of the moral component. That's where the blind spot comes from. The wound, the death, the scab. The scab over that wound is the generic moral blind spot. Now that's all in place. Now what happens? Well, now the character goes on their merry way. Now they go through the story. Now they're going through the middle. Now they're going through the doom. Now they're going through all the story structure beats you're building to make your story work. Being driven by that blind spot. That's what's covering the wound, yes? What are they doing? Well, they're acting badly in the world. This is the immoral effect that we talk about in chapters 10, 7, and in the ebook, describing what the effect is of that blind spot on their behavior in the story. They're hurting other people in some way, right? Not necessarily, cutting people's heads off and things like that. No, it could just be that they're emotionally unavailable. And that's all it is. That's all it is. That's enough. That's hurting other people. Okay? Excuse me. So now the moral effects are unfolding over the course of the middle of the story. At some point, they have that doom moment. You'll learn about that in the structure part of the class. They have the doom moment. All is lost, and lost night of the soul, whatever you want to call it. There's a billion terms for it. I call it the doom moment. And they realize, oh my gosh, I'm the problem. I've got to change. And then they go through the elevation pattern, which we talk about in the mushy middle, which we talk about in how you build that last part of the story. But they get to a point where they heal that blind spot. They strip off that scab. They take off that Band-Aid. Remember what's underneath it. The thing that died. What died? An emotional strength that they abandoned because they couldn't trust it way back when. Well, now they've changed. They've been through this horrible thing you put them through for 400 pages. Now they're ready to do something. The thing they're ready to do, they're going to reclaim that same strength. And because they do, it gives them a superpower, an emotional superpower that they take into the final battle with the bad guy or bad gal, and they beat them because they're now stronger than they were before, not in some stupid generic, the way so many stories talk about the steadfast character who never really changes. They just find that they're stronger than they were at the beginning of the story. It doesn't mean anything when you put it generically like that. They're stronger in this context because they've uncovered that weakness that they thought was a weakness that is really a strength. That is the source of their power, emotional power. They don't just change in some generic way and I'm stronger than I was before. No. They've got very specific resources, which we're going to go through. There's a list at the end of the worksheet that goes through some choices you have to pick from. Okay. You're not stumbling in the dark here. You actually are going to get some guidance about how to actually pick an emotional strength that works. But this is the thing that happens when they heal the blind spot. They uncover what died. It is no longer dead. It is now alive. They reclaim it, get that superpower back. We'll talk about what those are as well. And they win the day. Story over. This chain, all linked together, all build and is self-supporting. That's the character arc. Those are the pieces. You see all the pieces we talked about. The blind spot, the immoral effects, and the dynamic moral tension we'll talk about a little bit later is that tension between staying the same in the blind spot and growing and finding that strength and superpower. That's the dynamic tension. Okay? It's all related. Always go back to this chain if you get confused. This is what you're trying to build, a sense of connection in this worksheet. That's what the worksheet does for you. Okay?